Well, hello, great home care agency owners. I'm Tim Murray, founder of CINCH Community Care Management, and this was my wife and co-founder, Gina Murray. And today, this is a recording of the webinar panel we held, Mastering Fractional Home Care, Strategies for Success, Scalability, and Scheduling. Uh, but in real life, boo-boos happen, and we started recording 5 minutes in. But the good news is before we went into the panel that was moderated by Jessica and great agency owners, George Hyman and Mike Robinson. Gina and I did a little overview of what is community-based home care. We're former home care agency owners, and we got into community care, and we learned a lot during that process. And we learned we needed the right technology to be able to do a great job caring for seniors in independent living settings, and thus we developed CINCH CCM. But the focus of this panel today is to listen to Jessica, George, and Mike, and us as we all did it, and you're going to learn a lot through a Q&A that Jessica leads. So at this point, I want to introduce Gina, and she'll kick off the process with an overview of what is community-based home care.
So we like to start and make sure everybody's on the same page when we talk about community-based fractional home care. So these are your home care services, basically the services you do in a home, but in independent living communities, not assisted living, not skilled nursing homes. These are independent apartments, houses, townhouses, small cluster homes. So there are no services provided by the community. There's nothing, no one can help them get dressed, medication reminders, escort them to meals, etc. So that is what we're talking about, community-based fractional home care. So because many of these communities have lots of amenities, they have dining services, housekeeping, transportation, the visits that the clients need in these communities is typically pretty short. So they need basics, medication reminders, help with a shower, getting dressed, maybe reminders if there's some cognitive challenges. So visits can be 15, 30, 45 minutes. In our largest community, we offered a 7-minute visit, which was a check-in, which was very popular for our clients. The clients and their families really enjoyed that one. And one of the big difference about fractional home care is the caregivers are scheduled for a shift, say 7 a.m. to 1 p.m. in the community. But they're going to see many clients during that shift. They're not just at one apartment. So they need to have a schedule. They come in at 7 a.m. Who am I going to see first and what am I going to do there? So the typical agencies we work with average 20 to 100 clients in the community. And it's all based on that community. Some communities have what's called a higher acuity, that their folks have lived there for a very long time, and the supportive services that your agency, your home care agency provides keeps them there longer. So there might be more clients on service. But then again, those new independent communities opening up may be able to take somebody who needs just a little bit of service because your agency is there. Every community is different, and you'll find out that you'll need to base your services on the individual community. So what does it look like? There's your traditional home care, and it's pretty easy to schedule. I mean, the client asks for a 6-hour visit 5 times a week, and you look for a caregiver to go there. It's a 1-to-1. It's 100% utilization. Well, in community care, you have many clients, and they all have little bits. You may see the client may have 4 or 5 visits in a single day. So we need to be able to schedule many different clients to one caregiver. And what we found is the caregivers really need to be able to help each other because being siloed is really a problem. We found that community clients change their schedule quite frequently. You know what? I'm going out with my daughter. I need my shower 2 hours earlier. I need compression hose on and off just for 2 weeks. Can you make my visit longer in the morning, my visit shorter in the evening? These are independent folks. They got places to go, things to do, and they know what they want. So imagine your caregiver is going to an 8-hour shift and she shows up half an hour late. It's not great, not a good thing at all. However, it's not a game changer for that client. You let them know that they're going to be there. If a caregiver shows up half an hour late to a community, they may have missed 2 or 3 visits already. And then the ripple effect for the rest of the day can be really catastrophic. So it's community care services, you build teamwork. And the issue we found with the software that's currently available is it's built for one-to-one. It's built for traditional home care and not the many-to-many. So many clients to manage, many caregivers to manage. And so you need good organization. And when you build that teamwork, the caregivers love it. They love helping each other because they know they consider the residents, the clients in the community as ours and not mine and yours, because we're all going to take care of them and make sure all the visits get done. So having the right stuff, we inherited a community, was given to us rather rapidly when the other agency left because they just couldn't do it. And what we found was it's a very different business line, from the caregivers that you staff to the way you run it to setting expectations. You need to understand that it is a very different business line. So our first community was like putting our hand on a hot stove. We learned a lot of things. The community ran us for a good 4 to 6 months before we got a handle on it. And we finally said, okay, let's set some expectations. Yes, in our traditional setting, if there's a 9 o'clock visit, you are expected to be there by 9 o'clock. In the community, things happen that they have no caregivers have no control over, and we gave them a window of 20 minutes before to 20 minutes after. So if you have an 8 o'clock visit, they shouldn't show up any earlier than 7:40 or any later than 8:20. They needed to have that flexibility. We couldn't let them cancel with no notice. And once we set the expectations, not only with the residents and their families, but with the community staff, what can we do? What can't we do? What are we allowed to do? This resident is not on our service. You know, can we be a good neighbor and take their blood pressure? That's fine, but we can't do much more than that hands-on, and a lot of that state regulations. So we learned that pricing needed to be clear, simple, and appropriate. So for simple math, if I was charging $20 an hour for personal care in our traditional setting, the agency before us was charging $5 for 15 minutes. And they were so far underwater, the caregivers don't work 100% of the time. So a caregiver may have 3 15-minute visits in an hour. They may have one. So you really have to understand, how do you price this? It's concierge services, it's specialty services that they appreciate, not having to spend the money for 4 hours of a caregiver when they only need 45 minutes. So we did with technology, you know, just as I'm sure you all have great technologies for running your traditional home care, you need a technology that's going to manage all the aspects of this service. It was important that those caregivers, when they clocked in the morning, when they got to the community, that they had their list. They knew where they were going. They had the specifics for each visit. And then our office staff, I was the scheduler back in 2017. I was like, I need to see the big picture. There's all these little client visits, and how does it fit? How many caregivers do I need? Got a new client starting. Where can I fit them in? And I'd have the caregiver say, you're sending me from the first floor to the fourth floor. This doesn't make any sense. So having a big picture of what you've got. We found we were WellSky users, and we found that we didn't have the reporting in WellSky for the community part, because all these little bits, it didn't fit into the reports that they had. And I think we all know you've got to have a handle on your numbers to run a profitable business. So you need a technology that promotes teamwork, which is that's not common in home care, and empowers the caregivers. And I think one of the biggest things is in these communities, typically the internet Wi-Fi service is spotty. The lobby, it's great, but
Yeah.
walk to a client's apartment, they need to be able to log in, see what they're doing, and move on. So having the right stuff will make you very successful in community care.
Thank you, co-founder. Real quick, let's talk about the market segment. What we're talking about is independent living, but there's three segments that you can get into to add to your service. And it's quite exciting. And primarily, we were talking the independent living, which includes continuous care retirement communities. And there's roughly 11,000 of them. There's probably more based on our research. So there's quite a number. I don't know, you walk out your house and all of a sudden you have new independent living going up. And some of them come IL only, then IL, AL, memory care, and then CCRCs. All of them are a target for you. But the other cool stuff, active adult, 55 plus communities, they're all over the place too. And we did a webinar about a month and a half ago about Del Webb, where it took time, but we got asked to be the preferred home care provider. And the next thing you know, we had 27 clients. And fractional care, instead of 7 minutes or 15 minutes, they wanted 1 hour. And if you can get them all clustered together, that can happen. So this is what fractional care is all about. This is the target market, and it's an absolutely growing market that you could think about entering with the right mindset and the right stuff. So I'm going to stop my share. And now we're going to get to the real fun part, and that is the panel. So what I'd like to do, I'm going to let the panelists speak for themselves, Jessica, George, and Mike. Introduce you. I know everybody in the free world knows Jessica, but you know, if Jessica just do a little bit of intro, and then we'll move on to Mike and George, do a little bit about themselves and how long had George and Mike, how long have you been doing community care, and you know what kind of impact it's had on you. Jessica.
Awesome. Yeah, I will get started. So I have been doing community care for over 7, 8, maybe 9 years. I've been in home care itself for over 17 years. At some point, we just stopped counting years, right? But being in home care, I know the challenges of one caregiver with one client for hours at a time, right? As we want to grow and scale, we need more workforce. So whenever we got into community care, we realized that our profit margins were higher. We could staff a whole lot more clients with a lot less staff. And when you do a good job in community care, they don't just tell their existing residents, they tell the other. Most of these communities are connected, and they have literally the next territory over is another community that they begin asking you, will you take on more communities? So we were able to grow and scale. So that's why I love this, being in home care for so long and now helping so many other home care owners grow and scale their home care ops. I know the leverage that we can have in using community care. So I am the founder of Home Care Ops and Nobility Care Solutions, and we have a community over 9,000 home care owners. And this is a
Wow.
discussion that I want more home care owners to be aware that's out there. It is a diversified revenue line, and you have to go into it understanding that. And that's why I'm excited to dive in today with Mike and George. And I'm excited for y'all to get to know Mike and George. So without further ado, Mike, share a little bit about you, what agency you're with, where you're at, how long you've been doing community care, and what is the impact that it's had on your business growth?
Thank you, Jessica. Thank you, Tim, Gina. So I've been, well, Mike Robinson, Chicago, Illinois. Concierge Care is the name of our company. I've been at this 10 months. So me and my partners bought Concierge Care back in April of 2024. 95% of our revenue and clients are in an independent living building in Chicago. It's the biggest independent living building in Chicago, 525 residents. So the impact of community care for the business is basically the entire business. How I see it is an opportunity to leverage the relationship with the folks that own and operate the building. In my case, Senior Lifestyle Properties is a Midwest born, but now national brand of property ownership, real estate development, and property ownership that focuses on senior housing. And so doing a really, to put it simply, doing a really great job, continue to do a really great job service-wise, offers us an opportunity to leverage that relationship to be a preferred vendor or agency in multiple independent living communities, all senior lifestyle, with a little of the risk being taken away, meaning each building is run by an executive director. And so we can benefit from the success of our experience with our one building and then try to build and grow, just like Tim had mentioned a couple of minutes ago. And so we see community-based care as a critical part of our strategy as we grow. My partners and I are planning to acquire at least 3 or 4 other companies and other home care agencies, all direct pay. And now that we have a profitable model and an operational model we know is sustainable and we can replicate, now that pulls community care agencies that are selling into our whole strategy of buying more companies and integrating them together as well. So those are 2 parts of why it's critical for us. And thank you for the invitation to be here. Happy to be here.
Well, I love that you're here sharing, Mike, and the business perspective that you bring is such a valuable asset. And George, turn it over to you. Introduce yourself, where you're from, how long you've been doing community care, and the biggest impact it's had on your growth.
Sure. Thanks, Jessica, Gina, Tim. As always, appreciate the invite and the ability to chat with a bunch of mutual home care folks. I got into senior care. George Heineman, live in Birmingham, Alabama. I'm from Chicago. Not that that means anything, Mike, but go Chi-Town. But anyways, shout out to Chicago. Got into senior care back in 2018, really from more of the traditional home care model. My business partner, Joe Souls, founded Your Choice Senior Care, which I own and operate the original territory in Birmingham. We're a small franchisor now. We have 9 territories across the Southeast. And so it all started in home care for us, just I think like probably the vast majority of folks on this call. Quite honestly, I stumbled into community care probably about 5 years ago in my first community, and I'll just make it super simple. It just made sense to me. You know, when you look at community care and you look at what it takes to manage a remote workforce and honestly remote clients, it only made sense that if I could have my staff concentrated in one place, my clients concentrated in one place, I could better manage my staff. I can better care for my clientele, which is that's the goal that we all have on this call, is to do a great job taking care of our clientele. And obviously you need to marry that together with the right tools. For years, I've utilized a system called ERSP, which is a Kaleida Systems CRM. Not many home care agencies have utilized it, probably 1,500 in the country. But we recently migrated to WellSky in mid-24. And that's really when things took off as it relates to how do you better manage your client base in a community, and that's where I met Tim and Gina with CINCH. You need the right tool to be able to pull this off and to do it well. And one last thing, circling back to why it just made sense, we've all gone through inflation. Our clients have gone through it. We've seen our prices go up $5 to $6 per hour to our client base in the last really 2 years, 3 years. and taking advantage of economies of scale and being able to alleviate what I call the sitting time. I hate that vernacular, by the way. Sitters, I hate it. Um, by removing the sitting time out of what we provide, it's a win-win for our clients. They pay a more economical price with rising costs,
Yeah.
and we're able to alleviate the one annoyance that most of them have, and that is the sitting time. Now, mind you, if you stay in home, it is what it is, but it's a good way to differentiate your business by entering into a community and taking advantage of all the things I just mentioned.
Yeah, I love that. And I love that the reason why you started exploring community-based care is because it made sense. And I wish I could have that same experience of why I started community-based care. But frankly, when I first started thinking about it, it scared me to death. And how I got started is we actually started doing 24-hour care with a client inside of a community. And the family was like, this is so expensive. We don't need you sitting by his side every single day, every single hour of the day. And so they were like, we are going to have to cut down the cost of this 24-hour care. And so I said, how about this? How about you find 2 to 3 other residents here that also need care, and we can begin splitting the cost of care. We're going to explore community care, and that's how we kind of dove into it. But what we quickly realized is, oh my gosh, one caregiver could manage 7 to 9 clients, like ratio, fairly easy. And we realized that where we were making the profitability of about 45 to 50% in traditional home care, our profit margins were between 64 to 67% in community-based care. And that's when it began to make sense. And I was like, okay, I need to figure this thing out. And very similar to Tim, it was a lot of hard knocks. And those hard knocks and those expensive learning lessons is what we're trying to help you avoid when it comes to senior care. So whether you're like, with George and Mike, the two things I admire about them is they're very business minded. They are business driven. The numbers make sense, and the numbers make sense in a community. I'm more of the emotional, purpose driven home care owner. That numbers intimidate me, but I will tell you, when it comes to the community, the numbers quickly make sense when you have a strategic way of rolling out community care. And today, me and Tim and Mike and George are going to go through some of the most common questions, one that we had for ourselves, that we had to answer for ourselves, and that other people ask us when we talk about community care. And so, and like, let's just be honest, when we talk about community care, and for all of those who've been doing traditional home care for years or even for months, man, to think about, so you mean you're going to send a caregiver into a home for 7 minutes or 15 minutes or less than an hour? I can barely get caregivers to go for a 4-hour shift minimum. So it's easy to have a lot of doubts, and especially whenever you're coming up with something new. And I know for Tim, what is kind of those biggest fears that not only you and Gina had to overcome, but also the home care owners? I know that you're working with home care owners every single day that are rolling out community-based care. What was that biggest fear? How did you push through it? And how are you helping other home care owners to push through it? And for those of you that's on this call, if you have a big fear about rolling out community-based care, put it in the comments. We want to hear yours too.
Okay. Well, here's the deal. This is a transparent discussion. I didn't have any fear. And ignorance is bliss, right? I'm thinking, cool. My gosh, when we got 2017, a home care agency, the building was on their third one, and the home care agency pulled out right before Thanksgiving and got a phone call to Gina and I saying, good news, come by. We're going to now choose the home care agency. And Gina and I looked at each other like, what? But we went in and I'm like, we have 35 clients instantaneously, raise the roof. Well, go a couple of months forward, and the next thing I know, I'm looking at the numbers going, this makes sense. And Gina says, we got to pull out. And I'm like, what? She goes, the caregivers are frustrated. I don't have the scheduling tools I need. I'm not going to last. You
I'm
need
done.
you need to come up with a solution there, big guy. You kind of got us into this mess, so to speak. And the biggest thing, my fear there, Jessica, was the caregivers.
Hmm.
You know, we're Gina always hit me with that line, we're nothing without our caregivers.
Yeah.
And if we can't get them to work and those clients are unhappy, the one thing you got to recognize in your community care, and I think Mike and George will be with us on this, is you have a close proximity of a group of clients and you get a couple of clients upset at you, they go down to they go down to lunch and the next thing you know, you have a virus, right? So
Yeah.
you've got to really stay on top of it, but it starts with number one in the caregivers. So we, I, we developed Cinch. It took a couple of months of paper. We managed it on paper, but we got the caregivers together and we were all in it together. Okay, here's how we're going to approach this. Your input special.
And
And we started to develop what came to Cinch, and the caregivers, they always respect you. They know we've got their back.
Yeah.
And we morph forward and, you know,
yeah,
today's Cinch, the caregivers love the mobile app, and really that's where the rubber meets the road, is them getting their jobs done very well.
Yeah.
And that's what we focused on. It was one of those things. So I probably should have been scared. I wasn't, but then I got scared.
Well, I will tell you, I think the biggest fear that we had whenever we realized the leverage point in communities, you have a lot of leverage, but you also have those liabilities, like you just mentioned. One wrong client is dissatisfied, and then you've got an entire community, right? But really, even that, we found that doing good in the community was not as difficult as it was staffing and profitability, the profitability for those short shifts. Because Mike or George was just saying earlier, or you that like you went in and took over a community where someone else was doing a bad job. That might have been Gina. Um, we
Yeah.
ended up taking over a community that had a home care agency in it before that was doing a lot of short visits very inconsistently, and they were barely making ends meet. It wasn't profitable for them. So we knew that going in, not only did we have to do a great job, we had to do a great job consistently, and it had to be scalable, it had to be sustainable. And that's whenever we began looking at the different models of um, fractional community-based home care. And I think for all of you that are on this call right now, you're about to hear the different types of models, because all of us here probably do it a little differently. Going in, we knew that the biggest pain point walking in was profitability and happy clients, um, feeling like they knew that their caregiver was going to be there and for how long and when and length of time. So we went in and we were like, okay, there's three ways we can do it. We can either do that minute by minute short shifts, or we can do it through memberships, where there's like a membership where they pay flat rate memberships, or we can do it in units where they prepay so many 15-minute increments of units of care so that there's not so much guessing. For us, we decided to go with memberships. We had 3 different membership tiers that would um, be for someone who just needs us a little bit of time per month, or someone who really needed us 24/7. So there was a 3 different membership tiers that they could opt into, or if they only needed us occasionally, they could buy so many units of care, which was in 15-minute increments. That is the way that we do community care. That's the way that we coach our home care clients within our program. Um, but you're about to hear from Mike, and Mike is going to share a little bit about his model and how they roll out their services. And it's quite different from memberships or units. So, Mike, I would love for you to tell us a little bit about your overall service model.
Yep.
And short shifts seems like a logistical nightmare at first, but hearing you talk about it and how you manage it, I would love for you to share that model.
Yep. Thank you, Jessica. So I'll just answer a couple of questions I saw in the chat that couldn't get to
Yeah.
before I start out. And so we with relationship to the community, we don't have any financial, we actually lease an office in the first floor of the building. And so if we have any relationship whatsoever, we're a renter. Um, we don't have any financial ties to our business, to the community. There is no exclusivity, meaning there are other agencies working with clients who prefer or have a relationship with other caregivers. We have underground illegal caregivers as well. So we receive them around. So we kind of view it as an opportunity for us, and Jessica had mentioned this, as it's ours to win in terms of the potential work or referrals to residents that need our help. And that's fine for us. We just need to get better at it than any other agency. So already we can provide the fractional care for the fractional costs that other agencies won't from outside the community. We just need to do that and execute that in a way that the clients can expect. So expectation management is a huge thing. Expectation management of the client or the resident then leads to, well, how are you selling to them? How are you presenting the opportunity for this service? How are you billing for them for the services? Well, when I adopted this community, similar to how Tim and Gina were mentioning their experience, it was packages. And so the former owner of the company had packages of different types of care certain times per month, number of times per month. So 3 showers a month or 15 med reminders per month, etc. That was extremely confusing. So we did away with that and started having 15-minute increments of care. That is ADLs, IADLs, escorting inside of the building, other types of services. It led us to be creative with what we can do under our license and with our caregivers' capabilities. What can we do for 15 minutes? And then what can we do for 30 minutes? That's now $32 for a 30-minute visit. Is it changing bed linens, laundry, etc.? Can we do all of that? If the client requires an hour, maybe 1 or 2 times a week, it's 2 30-minute visits. And we have prepay incentives for discounts, but we don't have prepaid packages per month. And we don't have memberships yet, although I love that idea. Just figure out how to weave that into our model. Does that answer the question, Jessica?
Yeah, no, I love it. And for those of you, if you're putting your questions in the comments, we're going to go back at the end and make sure we get your questions. So keep them coming. And I love that. So, Mike, what you have shared lets us know that you have made those short shifts. You didn't have to put it in a fancy membership package, and you didn't have to prepay or pre-sell units to make it really profitable and a long-term sustainable business that not only is working well right now, but you're like, we're wanting to invest in more of these because it's so profitable. And I love that. And so, Tim, I would love to hear a little bit from you and George of, obviously it's a little bit different. Like you do for all of you who are doing home care, traditional home care out in the homes, this is a diversified revenue stream. Like you have to think about this as another line of revenue. It has to be managed differently. It has to be organized differently, has to be communicated differently. And it's even marketed and sold a little bit differently. And we all want to talk about diversified streams of revenue. This is considered one of those things. So whenever you're rolling out a new service line, a new product, how did you get your team on board with a new approach? And Tim, we'll hear from you, and then Mike, we'll hear from you. Because I would love, Tim, for you to share, how did you, because you guys were in home care, 100% traditional home care, that you then begin leveraging that same staff, supportive staff and field staff, to begin providing community-based care. So how did you get your team on board with that?
Do you want to take a shot at that, co-founder? I saw you smiling.
Sure. Well, first he presented as like, we have this great opportunity, let's go. And then, we were all like, yay. And we're all about the learning curve. And so what we realized was we created a lead caregiver, because what was happening with when you have 30 new clients, then you have 30 new families who all want to understand, and they're calling the office, they're texting, they're emailing. So we needed to establish lines of communication. And once we established a lead caregiver who didn't have as many visits, so we kept the lead caregiver at about 40% utilization, but they were feet on the street for answering questions, answering family questions, client concerns, things like that. And then we morphed it into the lead caregiver did the staffing of the caregivers in the community. So they were like a player coach. So if somebody called out, they knew that they were working alongside the lead caregiver the next time they came in. And it kind of it fostered great teamwork, um, to alleviate from our office staff, from the traditional care, because it hit them hard, initially. And then we established, email questions about invoices and changing schedules. Always call for an immediate care need. So once we helped establish those expectations for the clients and families, it eased the burden of our office staff, and they were a little happier then. But getting a caregiver, and then our community where we had over 90 clients, we had a care coordinator, and that was great. She basically ran the building. So
I love that. And I do think it's important whenever you have a community. And just so everybody knows, most of these communities have, especially when you're truly doing community-based care as a diversified revenue stream, you have a caregiver station there within a window of time, 8 to 5 or 8 to 8 or whatever works for your model. But there is a caregiver station there, even if there is not active clients on the calendar every minute of every day. So it is important. We had a community care coordinator who overseen the caregivers, and then we had our care leads. And our caregivers loved it once they got into it, because there was also incentives to bringing on new clients. Your caregivers can become your biggest referral source. And George, I would love for you to share a little bit. What are some things when it comes to training and operations with your team? Did you really have to prioritize and make a concerted effort to help caregivers understand the difference between what they would do in the home, traditional home care, and how they are providing care in a community?
Sure. Well, let's start with the system first. So up until our introduction to Cinch, um, I'm just going to be real about it. It was hell, because we were, what I'd like to say, we were bootlegging ERSP to make it work from a billing and a payroll perspective, which gave us absolutely zero visibility into our efficiency. So I had absolutely no real clue other than pen and paper, kind of scratching through that. So transitioning to Cinch and the platform we're using now in conjunction with WellSky. So that's sort of where, the training and sort of the whole operational piece comes together. So we've taken a slightly different tack than I think what Gina and Tim did. My care coordinators are still the supervisors in the field, not specific to the community, not specific to home care, just in general. So they sort of manage the whole landscape. That works for us. But we've utilized community care as a stepping stone for caregivers to make a little bit more money, because money talks, right? We know what walks. So money talks. And so we selected by nature. You hear about the fragility of the client base in a community. You've heard it from Mike, you've heard it from Gina, you heard it from Tim, and you'll hear it from me. One bad egg spoils the entire dozen in a community. So you have to be so careful with that egg. You have to nurture it and take care of it and deal with it, because that bad news spreads way faster than the good news. And that's just human nature, unfortunately. And so what we did is we've sort of structured, you kind of, the cream rises to the top. Well, that's true for caregivers too. So we tend to position our more skilled, and just our better staff ends up in the communities. And guess what? We're able to pay them a little bit more because of the economies of scale I was speaking about earlier. I'm able to pay them $1 or $2 more per hour for taking on, for eliminating the sitting time, right, from their job. So they're working maybe a little bit harder in some cases, but they're getting rewarded for it. And so that's how we've structured it in our operation. I'll tell you, it's worked well, because it makes, because the caregivers all talk. And if anybody on this call doesn't believe me, then you may not be watching your operation very closely. But what happens is is that they start talking. And then you get caregivers that start inquiring about, hey, how do I make a little bit more per hour? Or what, tell me about what I need to know. And so it really becomes this weird natural stepping stone, at least in our operation, that didn't exist before, that lends to more opportunity and growth. And the next thing you know, you may be identifying your next care coordinator because they really start learning how to manage more with less, right? And so that's sort of, I sort of like Tim was describing earlier, you sort of stumble your way into community care at first, and then you stumble your way into, wow, these margins are amazing. and then you start realizing, holy crap, there's some other really cool operational things that are coming out of this. And so what we're trying to help you all do and that's what we try to do as a franchisor, is we're trying to help alleviate the stumbling for you guys. We're hopefully gonna give you a more direct pathway to success, albeit community care is an investment, and I'm not going to sugarcoat that. You can go into home care and make money on your first shift. In reality, you can. Community care is not that way. You have to build community care. You have to love it. You have to nurture it, and you have to grow it. Best part about community care for me, and this is I'm sort of joking, so please take it that way, but the community sales force is my sales force, because if they buy into what we do, they use it to sell their building.
I totally agree.
And guess what? When they call me, guess who shows up? I'll be there.
Yeah.
Because their success begets my success and vice versa. And I'll tell you, I'm one of the only vendors for one of our communities in Birmingham, Somerby, which is a bridge community, that has given, to date in the 5 years, probably 6 vendor professional referrals, which is a big deal to those salespeople. Like when they get a vendor referral, that's like gold in their hands to their corporate leadership. And there's no other home care agency that has done that for them. Because guess what? I was able to deliver continued care. Even though they were moving out of their home, I was able to suggest another place for them to live that was at an economical cost for them. So I did 2 things. I gave a referral to a good, dedicated referral source. And number 2, I maintained a client that I would have otherwise lost.
Mhm.
And that's the beauty of it.
Yeah, I love that. And that really leads to the next thing. And as I was like preparing for this panel, several of our coaching clients and several of the people in our community, they reached out and said, well, the biggest thing that we've had trouble doing is getting more clients in the community. And that's where I'm like, I love the marketing side that can happen inside of a community. And I know for anyone who's doing community well, that they have really tapped into the marketing leverage that they have. The brilliant thing that we do as community-based care in these communities is we shut their back door. Independent living communities work really hard to get people in the front door. And the last thing they want them to do is to move out because they need a little bit more help than they can get from the independent living community. So there's so much that you can leverage from the staffing of the community standpoint, the leadership of the community, and then the clients themselves. And I would love, Mike, for you to share that kind of like the best marketing tactic that you guys are doing right now. And George, then I would like for you to share. And I just want to take a quick second. And I want to appreciate you guys because you're sharing your strategies, public facing. These are your secret strategies that are making you successful. And I appreciate that.
Yeah, but Mike said it earlier. And that's why we don't mind sharing it, is that not everybody can execute it.
Exactly.
That's right. It's all about the execution.
That's the key.
So how we market is similar, but I'll start from the beginning. So I just started developing relationships with the leasing agents at this building, for example. There's 5 of them. There's 525 residents in this building, and they turn over, I think, 12 to 15 units turnover every month. So we are part of a couple different major categories. They're getting inquiries to corporate, trying to set tours, and then their metric is a tour to a lease sign. for that leasing team. And so I said, anytime you have somebody in a gray tour that you don't think is going to be a yes, bring them by my office and I'll just ask questions, interact with them. They'll see our caregivers, they see the operations. Most likely they'll see a caregiver interacting with our shirts on, interacting with a resident. Where that's made a big impact for the leasing group is for families and relatives or friends of the person moving in who is afraid that they are living on their own. And so that's probably a good third. It just happens to be that way, where people say, oh, there's a service here. So when you need it, so you're not going to move in today and then have to move out 6 months later if you have an issue or need some support. There's a first line of help here. So that's the move in side of the relationship that's really helped us a bit and strengthens our relationship with Senior Lifestyles, the community. The other is the back door, which is, a non-move to AL, which, there's this preconceived notion that moving to AL will start a decline. It's not a place that people want to live. It's not as socially as engaging. And so they're trying to stay as long as they can. The building wants to keep lease revenue as long as they can. And so we're kind of doubly motivated to the point where it's a safety concern, right? And so we don't want to provide one-on-one 24/7 care for a bedridden person for very long in an independent community, of course. But there's a lot that happens prior to that. And examples are somebody's not a client of ours at all and they fall, they go to a hospital. The executive director shoots us an email saying, hey, we have John coming back on Tuesday out of rehab. Can you contact him and see if he's interested? Well, he wouldn't have come back at all to this particular building or apartment, probably would have had to move somewhere else. But he was able to come back. We offered him care for, say, 3 weeks or so. First it was fractional, then it was a little bit of one-on-one. He recovered, and then he sort of slowed down his service with us, and that retained a resident for them. So that's an example. We also are highly active. So we pay our caregiver. We actually use Cinch to manage this too. Non-billable scheduled time at the community. And so examples are we lead sit and stretch exercise classes. We lead bingo twice a week with different people. We run their move in new resident orientation. So we're part of that whole process, which is usually like a 20-minute every 2 weeks presentation. And my goal is to have at least 5 events that Concierge Care runs for their activities coordinator. It just makes everybody refresh on our name. They understand that we're in it not just for the revenue, that we actually like participating. Caregivers like participating with the residents, and we're in it with them. And those are some of our big strategies. I hope that answered.
Yeah, I love that. George, what is like that number one marketing tactic that you do to keep new clients coming in consistently?
So my pricing list, my price menu is my magic sauce. We've taken a very similar tack to Mike in that we've broken service down into increments of time. 15 minutes just makes sense for us. Similar to Mike, it breaks the hour up evenly into quarters. There's been some questions asking about how do you price that out. I would suggest if your full rate for an hour, when you're looking at quarter hour pricing, your 30 minutes should equal about that. So you're at 50% utilization of your caregiver. Therefore, if you fill that hour truly with care, because you're not going to fill every hour of the day and every quarter hour, it's just not going to happen. But that's what Jessica was alluding to when you see these margins is your margins could be outrageously awesome, for 2 or 3 hours, which would allow you to have 2 or 3 hours of dead time. You don't want that, but so that's sort of the advantage of it, right? The other thing that I think there were some questions too in the dialogue about, cancellation policy, things like that. Mind you, we try to hold our clients pretty firmly on cancellation policy, but I'll tell you, our in-home cancellation policy is really, 24 hours, we have been extremely flexible in the community. And so this kind of ties into your question around the marketing piece, is that the community is lended to flexibility as well. So if we do have somewhat of a last minute change, you know, I could be a jerk and say, no, we're charging you those 15-minute visits, or we can extend them some grace because life happens in senior living. And it really doesn't cost us any more. Our cost is already fixed. It's sunk for the day. And so it's just a matter of, do I eat away at my margin to save face with my client and therefore keep my community happy with me? So we do that. We provide a little more flexibility in that regard, but you don't want to give away the store. So all that being said, my magic sauce is in our pricing sheet. That's generally what I go into a community with. It outlines essentially how we break down the hour, what it costs. I offer everything. I even have some time-based packages which provide some greater efficiencies to the client, and me more of a fixed monthly picture of what that's going to look like. You know, as far as revenue is concerned, and really it gives the client a good idea of what their monthly cost is going to look like. You got to be careful with that because you don't want people to kind of like get ahead of themselves and then shy away from certain services because they look at the monthly number. So you have to play with that a little bit based on your market, and you have to know your audience, I guess is the best way to put it. But really, I mean, it's my pricing sheet, and my pitch to the community is, listen, I want to help you sell more apartments, and I want to help you close your back door. And you're going to hear that time and time again on this call, because I want what they want. They want census and to keep their net, and I want census, right? And I want to increase my net. And so that's how I'm appealing to their need, not my need. And I think that's the difference, is you have to appeal to the community's need and less about you. Because if they see that you're truly coming in to help them and help them with their goals, I mean, you're going to have 10 of their staff, their ED, their sales reps, their activities directors in line to give you a big old wet kiss on your cheek, because we're all chasing that nut. You know what I'm saying?
That actually happens.
So
that's our experience too, George. 100%. Yeah.
that's so hopefully that answers your question, Jessica, and some of
Yeah.
the answers on the panel.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm about to like give you guys like a 60-second marketing in community care because I love it. There's so much you can do. And I'm going to start with I'm going to echo what George just said. Pricing is really important. And I'm seeing a lot of questions come in about pricing in the comments. And so I'm just going to paint a scenario for you, because if the pricing, the packaging, the people, the perks, those are all the things that we want to consider whenever we're putting together marketing for an independent living community or community-based care. Just like Mike said, a lot of times, and George said, we are the closers a lot of times for these independent living communities. And one of the things that we do with the independent living communities is we tell the actual director of marketing, or the ones that are doing the tours and closing the deals, if you have someone that's a little uncertain that this is the right community for them, or they're going to get the level of care that they need as they age, then we provide so many units to the community, and we'll say, you can provide out. So a unit, 5 15-minute increments is about equivalent to someone paying us $100. So we can give the community so many, like, here's so many units that you can provide to help you close the deal. Now that's very low marketing investment on our end, but we've empowered them to close a deal. So you know what they do? They make sure everybody knows us in that tour, because we help them close the deal. And then they can throw in this little, you know what, I'm going to give you an entire unit package for this care agency, for if you need it, when you need it. It doesn't expire, right? So that's always there. It's that peace of mind. So pricing. And then when it comes to pricing, let's talk about pricing when we're talking to someone who's like, how much does this cost care, the care cost? We want to keep it simple. First, we say we meet you right where you're at. Our goal is to keep you independent for as long as possible, not grow to more dependent on us. So we start with memberships that range from $250 all the way up to $1,600 a month. So whether you need us a few hours a week or whether you need us several hours a day, there's membership packages that make it clearly easy and simple to understand. You're never going to have surprise rates. But if you're like, you know what, I don't want to commit to care every week or every day, then we have the units. You can select 5 units, 10 units, 15 units. The more units that you prepay for, the less the care is, right? So we sell them this through sheer simplicity. And then if they say, well, I just need someone a few hours, just this one time, then we say, oh, we specialize in solutions and we can have a dedicated personal caregiver that is exclusively yours come out. What are we thinking? Maybe 4 hours a day, 3 to 5 days a week. And then we upsell them on traditional home care. It's brilliant. It works every time. So we are a full solutions service. And we leverage community care to provide more independent care for a longer amount of time to people who's going to be on our census a whole lot longer. Because of community care, the average amount of time that we keep a client is from 8 to 12 years. 8 to 12 years is the lifetime of a client because of community-based care. We're getting them much, much younger. Our clients are still going and playing golf on the weekends, but paying for our services throughout the week. And number 3, when we talk about people and perks, we are in the market of social society. So if you're a client of ours in a community, you get a gold card and you get to come to our social club once a month and bring one guest. And it's like a freaking awesome social night that we sponsor that's exclusively for our clients. And then they love bringing their special guest gold card to get someone else in that community there in that meeting. So marketing becomes easy. It becomes fun. It becomes a thing that people aspire to be a part of. It's not just you old folks needing care out there. It's like, hey, are you a part of the social club? We're having wine and music tonight. Would you like to be my special guest this week? And you're literally, all of your clients are under one roof or in the same parking lot. So you don't need to spend near as much to reach 500 people all at one time. So there is, and we will, like, if you're in the home care owners community, we can dive into this conversation a little bit later, but I just want you to know the power of marketing and echo what George and Mike are talking about. And as we're wrapping up, I want to be mindful of everybody's time. I have time to stay over a little bit to answer questions we haven't got to, but the word cinch has come up multiple times. And I will tell you, I don't want anybody to get off this call without realizing there's actually a tool to make it simpler. Now, I used a scheduling software that was great for traditional home care. But when we started doing community care, it was very difficult. We were doing a lot of Excel, Google Sheet, tracking, along with our software to finally, my husband, Clint, for many of you know Clint, he's good at software and he had to build our own software. Now, that's not something that everybody can have or everybody can do. I don't even want to reset my password, much less build the software. And that's whenever I was, you hear the term cinch. Tim and Gina, who are home care owners, who have provided care in community, created a software because we had the same software, and it our typical traditional scheduling wasn't working for us. And both Mike and George, they've both mentioned the term cinch. And so Mike, I would like for you to share a little bit about how important it is to have a tool that helps you actually manage care more efficiently. Speak a little bit to cinch.
I
That a way
will.
for people who are thinking about community care, that they don't just have to figure out the strategy of rolling it out, but they also know there's a tool that can help them with all the operational back end.
Yep. Thank you, Jessica. So right now, when we adopted the company, about 90% of our revenue and clients was in the community. In September, it was about 60% of our revenue. And I was starting to say, if I need to manage this out of WellSky community, I'm going to set a plan to replace that revenue with traditional one-on-one hours and move away from the community entirely. So I was about to cry uncle. Went to a home care CEO meeting. That's a group that we're part of. And there's, I think, a couple hundred CEOs of home care companies just like us here. And in those meetings, I had mentioned all of this, and I think 4 or 5 people said, check out Cinch. So I think I emailed set up a meeting on my flight home from California. And then by the next week, I was talking to Tim and Gina. They said, wow, this is exactly the story that we hear, exactly why we're propped up to do this. And then I think we adopted right away, as best we could, given the small company, limited resources. So meaning caregivers to adopt the app and start to change the way that they're working using using the tool. Instantly made a difference. One, because of the connectivity, well skies, clock in, clock out for short shifts or tasks is virtually impossible for us. The building's a huge concrete monolith. So the offline feature was huge. The second was managing the tracks or the number of caregivers necessary to visually articulate quickly how we can get all these services done and who's going to complete them. We even sort of make preferential visits based on caregivers, and we can see that very clearly using the tool and the scheduling side of things. Adding services and moving services, putting people on hold is much faster than WellSky. And here's the beauty. We don't go away from WellSky at all. So all of the care management, the family portal for Cinch exists, obviously, but then we have all of that API into WellSky. So we're going to keep WellSky for our one-on-one care and other parts of our business. And then we have Cinch that I say, non-technical term, lays on top of WellSky. And so the adoption was like a little bit of a challenge, new app, get used to the workflow. But Gina, Micah would jump on calls, do a little video training, give us a couple of tools and things to focus on. The next 2 weeks, things went much more smoothly. It was such an impact that our partners, the senior lifestyle folks, asked what we did. It was like, okay, we just have a better scheduling system. Wow, that made a big difference. And so, gosh, I don't know. I wouldn't do it without Cinch. And, you know, my experience in home care is somewhat limited to some of you guys, but I know that for a fact. If we go to another community, it's only going to be because we have this tool that we can execute it with not that much labor. And so I don't have anything but great things to say about Cinch the tool. And how you can use it is almost immediate. And that I was really happy with. It didn't take 2 or 3 months to quote implement. It was more of a get used to the workflow type of a thing. So yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And it really is important. I speak from having to connect a lot of inefficient tools together. So having the tools makes it so much more easier, because it seemed like the first year we were just trying to figure out how to run operations more efficiently. We couldn't even focus on profitability at first because there was just so many efficiency things that we had to close the gap on. And George, I would love for you to speak to
Sure.
just the importance of having the tool.
Well, I'm just gonna speak candidly, although I'm not gonna put too many nails on any coffins here, Tim and Gina. So just hold on. But anyways, I when we switched CRMs as a franchise organization, not just my Birmingham location, part of the reason why I moved to WellSky was because they had a feature that nobody else had, and that was community care. Um, Mike, you said it the most diplomatic way you could have possibly ever said it. You said monolithic. And that's exactly how WellSky's community module is built. It's monolithic. And because every home care agency is monolithic, it works great. No, home care is not monolithic, it is dynamic. And and quite honestly, I have to give all the credit to WellSky. They introduced me to Tim because I was a very frustrated WellSky user, brand new WellSky user, trying to use community care to solve a problem that I thought it was going to solve. When in fact it just didn't. I'm just going to say it didn't work. Okay, let me just say that it just didn't work. They introduced me to Tim and Gina, which was the smartest thing WellSky could have ever done in our relationship together, because I was about ready to dump WellSky. I was so frustrated with them. And I developed a relationship with Tim and Gina. As a new franchisor, I know exactly where they are. because you can be super hands-on when you're working with new client base and trying to grow your business. So I fully respect where they're at, and I love them for that because we operate the same way. And I said to Tim, and I said, I don't care who else you have in line. I want first in line. And whenever you all decide to integrate this thing, I'm your guy. I will go through the pain. I will go through the learning curve. I will do whatever it takes to get WellSky and Cinch integrated, because all it took was about 10 minutes of their demo. And I'm like, dude, you guys you get it. Like they literally built Cinch for everything a community care home care agency would need it to do. Like I even said to Tim G, I'm like, this is ingenious that you actually created a way to work offline. Like, who would have thought about that? Because how many times have we had, especially in the community, where our caregivers say, oh, I don't have signal, I can't clock in and out? It's probably one of the single biggest complaints we hear from caregivers when it comes to clocking in and out. Well, there's no excuse. It doesn't matter if you have cell service or not, Wi-Fi or not, as long as they have their app pulled up and their tasks loaded for the day, they can do everything offline on their device and still accomplish their job and sync it back up once they have signal again. And the best part that I like is the fact that they can complete tasks. Well, I'm not going to say that we want them to do this, but even if they're off site, most home care CRMs do not allow you to complete the task lists if you leave the site and forget to clock out. The best part about what Cinch does and how it sort of works independently in that regard from WellSky is that a caregiver supervisor can call them once they've gotten home and say, can you please complete the last 2 or 3 tasks from your day so that I don't have to do it for you? And they can do it from the comfort of their home. So here's the reality is that I would add 10 more communities to our repertoire if I could. And I would only do it because I know Tim and Gina and we use CINCH CCM. I would rather poke my eyeballs out with a spoon rather than try to do it without it, because I have, and I know Mike has, and I know Tim and Gina have, and I'm just not going to go there anymore. And it just does not make sense to try to do it with a system that was developed by people other than folks that had lived and breathed what it takes to do community care well. And that's Tim and Gina and Micah with Cinch. And that's my pitch for them, because I love them. They answered a gaping hole in community care, shoot, in the United States, maybe in the world, when it comes to a CRM that addresses everything you could possibly need or want to have in a CRM for community-based care. So if you're going to get into this, don't try to do it cheap. Get into it with the correct tool from the beginning. Don't go through the pain we all went through. Do it in conjunction with a partner like a Tim, Gina, and Micah with Cinch, because if you don't have the right tool, you're not going to experience all the benefits that we have all communicated on this call about the economics of community care. Community care is awesome. It's a place to be, but you need the right tool to do it.
Thank you, George. And I want to thank you for like being very candid. Like, this is real people. I hope everybody right now realize this is real people, overcoming and dealing with real challenges, sharing real experiences through real talk. And I will tell you that Tim and Gina both said, make this educational, don't make this promotional at all. But I love that what George did is he just shared the strategy and the tools that made him so successful. So in like community care, it's not an easy gravy train of money, despite what we sometimes make it sound like when we're sharing the marketing pretty, right? It still takes work. It takes organization. It takes strategy. It takes an investment. George has been very clear about you go into this as an investment. If you do it right, you've got to be able to float some payroll up front. You've got to be able to float some investment up front. but community care is a very profitable, diversified revenue stream. And I can speak for all of us who have been doing community care for years and years. And I was among the few that got super excited and was on the beta testing for a community add-on within a software that didn't answer our needs. So to know that there's tools there is such an accelerator to growth. So I want to thank you, George and Mike, for being very candid, not only with what it takes to grow and maintain a community, but also what it takes to operationally manage and efficiently manage community care. Because as both of these guys said, Mike, how many clients did you have? Like 500? There's hundreds of clients in community care, right? It's not just a few that you're having to manage. So, and we see a lot of questions coming in the comments. We want to be mindful of your time. I love that you're still you're still asking questions. Tim, I'm going to turn it over to you to answer some of these questions that I know that you and Gina, you're typing in the comments. Next steps, though, I want everybody here to leave with a clear next step. Number one, like if you're thinking about doing community care, talk to people who have done it. Get the real life story, the real life challenges and how they've overcome them. You can reach out to George or Mike or me. You can even go into the community. We have a Facebook community on Facebook. It's completely free. There's over 9,000 home care owners at every level, from startup all the way to 120 million in annual revenue every year. I just put the comments there because we can keep this conversation going in that community. Tim is in there. Gina is in there. They can answer your questions there. But number two, if you know that community care is something that you really need to be exploring, or if you're already doing community care and you're using Google Sheets and Excel sheets and you're trying to create your own software like we were several years ago, make sure that you go ahead and set up a call with Tim and Gina and just say, hey, this is what I'm doing right now. How can you help me?
I
And
agree with that. I'll chime in there, Jessica. I think somebody in the chat has said, is there consulting or one-on-one coaching? I mean, that's Tim and Gina provide that, I believe, as a service separate from the software. But I've learned more about the model suggestions for our specific situation as we're configuring Cinch for our clients. They actually consulted me on how to provide better service given where we are and how we want to scale. So it was actually, I say that type of coaching was probably as important as the software itself. So I would definitely call them. They're the experts in this, and I can make myself available, of course, to chime in if anybody wants to contact me directly.
I echo that as well, Mike. You're 100% correct. They uncovered things and thought of things I didn't even conceive until we started getting into configuring Cinch for community care. It was just like I thought I had all the light bulbs turned on, but I didn't. They turned a few more on for me.
I love that. And that is the power of going with someone who that they get it, they've got it, and they have already done it wrong 200 times so that now they figured out how to do it right. And that the most expensive lesson that you'll ever learn is the ones that you learn on your own. And so it is always money ahead, growth ahead, success ahead to invest in those who have already done it. And that's why I love that Tim and Gina, they have it. They have a tool, they have a resource, and they have the experience in growing community-based care. Jump into the community just to have talks with other home care owners within our coaching program, within Action Leaders and Home Care Boardroom. We're talking about how to grow diversified revenue streams. Community-based care is a really big source of increased profitability. So you have next steps. Either join the community, schedule a call with Tim and Gina and Micah, or if you're like not ready for, I think everybody, those are two steps that everybody should really consider doing. But right now, if you're like, I don't know if I'm still not ready, begin looking at the community care in your area. How many is that available? How many people are unhappy with the current care that's in their community, even if they have dedicated care team serving at this level in that community? Begin to become more aware of the opportunities in your area. And so, all right, Tim and Gina, I'm going to let you take over because I see a lot of cinch questions. I think most importantly, if you have a question, that's probably your cue to maybe book a call with Tim and Gina. But is there a few questions that you can wrap up that you see coming in the comments quite frequently?
Yeah, thank you. Micah, do me a favor, get a printout of the chat because that way we can follow up with a Q&A and distribute it to everybody in the recording. I think one of the questions, why is an integration needed with Cinch? It's not. Cinch can operate completely standalone. It's just that with George and Mike, we did an integration uh, with WellSky. We also have integration with Access Care, but you can use it completely by itself, and we can show you a little cool methodology to leverage any technology. We have can time users, we have ERSP users, and we got a methodology where both can be used side by side. Because, like we said, we've all pointed out, this is a separate business line. So you can manage the community care in Cinch and manage traditional in whatever tool you wanted. The nice thing about Access Care and WellSky, you get the best of both worlds, but it can be used completely independent. Um, let's see what other good ones we have coming in that there's a lot of great.
I'm putting our email addresses in the chat so people can contact us. That'd be easy.
Yeah, and George and Mike, is it okay when we do the recording, I can have your contact information
Certainly.
Sure.
because you hit the nail on
Yeah,
the
I got
head.
no
Well,
problem with that.
all right, that's really great, guys. And I think I love our customers because we all work together. I know we're in different businesses and, but I always felt home care was a team sport. And even if a competitor reached out to me, I remember a home care assistant reached out to me when we were good old aware senior care and said, "What's wrong with my pricing?" And I looked at it and it was like an NFL playbook. It was like, "Oh my God, how can you even interpret this?" And I think one of the things for all of you, keep it simple. And your test is to take your pricing, hand it to the executive director or the community care coordinator, your customer. Do you understand this? And if they don't, you probably need a little work, you know? So, it is a weapon, by the way. And I completely agree with Jessica. George emphasized that. But these are the things we learned. And we're happy, whether you are a Cinch client or not, you'll find we just like to help people or point them
Yeah,
in the
you
right
need to,
direction.
to your point, Tim, you need to have it so simple. You have to think about who's reading it. It's a stressed out, like, completely somebody that's in a completely stressful situation that's trying to figure something out for their mom or dad. It has to be so simple for them to understand without sitting there studying it. You're so right, Tim. And that, I mean, Mike, you mentioned it. I think you changed your pricing from package care. That I looked at some of the pricing of my competitors and I'm like, if I can't figure this out and this is what I do for a living, how in the
Yeah.
hell can the consumer understand it? So I went super elementary with it, like just not, but super simple. Like, can anybody understand this when they pick it up and look at it? And I think that's the key.
Yeah. And I think we're I'm still getting a lot of questions about pricing and pricing structure and short shifts versus um memberships versus unit concierge prices. I'll be happy that tomorrow I'll go live in the Facebook community and I'll talk a little bit more about pricing structure because there's a lot that you
Yeah.
can do. There's a lot that
Right.
you can leverage. That way we continue this conversation. We'll connect. I'll be sure Tim and Gina to tag you in that live as well, so that you can carry the conversation where I may leave off of when it comes to the actual tool and how your tool would support any of those different models. So, and then some of the questions, Jennifer, I see you. If you're already one of our coaching clients and action leaders or the home care boardroom, there's already some incredible training and templates and service agreements and all of that I'll make sure that you have available to you as well. Next steps to wrap it up. Join the community, join the discussion, join the conversation. It's absolutely free. And be able to chit chat with 9,000 other home care owners and leaders. And then Tim and Gina, as you can see, they serve from their heart, and they have truly provided a solution. You heard that from Mike and George, who are users who utilize their platform every second of every day for their business. So connect with Tim and Gina. And I just want to give a big shout out to George and Mike. I want to thank you. Thank you for sharing your time, sharing your strategies, sharing your experience. And then Tim and Gina, thank you for allowing me to facilitate this panel and be a part of this discussion.
You're so welcome. I get a little choked up about that discussion, guys. So sorry. You know, but we miss being home care agency owners sometimes because of this. Just there's just something about us and the spirit and all that. So I hope everybody learned something today. I learned a couple things, by listening to Jessica, George, and that's the cool thing. And all of us are the same cloth. You need help, we'll help you. We will. That's what we all do. And I'm amazed at how many people we had. An hour and 24 minutes. I mean, I guess we were sharing some good information, and I appreciate everybody hanging with us today.
Jessica, thank you so much for what you do and how you do it. I mean, anybody can teach, but when you teach from the heart, and we really, really appreciate it. So thank you, Mike. Thank you, George. Thank you, everybody, for being here. We enjoyed the
Our
conversation.
pleasure. Thank you, Jessica, as well. You need somebody to be able to put all of us crazy people together, and you somehow manage that. And I'm very grateful for it too, because we are one community. And here's the reality we all face, and the world faces, and that is, in the next 20 to 30 years, there's going to be too few of us and too many people to take care of. So we all have to work together and have smart strategies to take care of as many people as we can. That's why my business partner and I are growing out our brand as well. It's because there's such a need for what we do, and we have to be smart about how we do it.
Got it. Well said, George.
Want to thank you. We will share the recording with everybody and email it out. So thank you again, guys. I hope you enjoy the remainder of your day, and thank you so much again, Jessica.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jessica. Thank you all for joining.
Thanks, guys.
Bye now.